Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, Understanding the Qur'an. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this segment, we continue to look at the 18th chapter of the Qur'an, the chapter known as Surah Al Kahf, or the chapter of the cave. And we are continuing on from the 9th verse. In the 7th and 8th verses, we found Allah describing the beauty of the earth, and that the earth and what is in it, whatever beautiful things are in it, are there as a means of testing human beings with regards to their deeds, their faith in God. Will it create in them good deeds? Will they act in accordance with their knowledge and benefit from this world as a means of preparing for themselves a good life in the next world? And Allah goes on to describe how this world would end, that all the vegetation that we see, it will all dry up and go, as we see it happening in locales, in different localities around the earth. You know, it can happen for the whole earth, and this is what will happen. Everything which is on it is going to end. Following that, Allah shifts the topic, and we should be conscious here that this shift is not, there's no build-up to the shift. What we find, and this is common throughout the Qur'an, that when Allah discusses different topics, you know, He may shift from one to another without giving an introduction to it. He's talking to us as human beings directly, and this is the way we communicate with each other. You know, we might be talking to somebody, we finish a topic, what we're saying, and we automatically start the next topic without, you know, having a great build-up for it, as we might if we were writing a book. So though the Qur'an is a book and a text, it communicates with us as one would speak to us directly. And this is why the Qur'an is unique among the books of the world. So in the 9th chapter, we find Allah beginning a new topic. The 9th verse begins with the following.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Am hasibta anna ashabal kahfi wal raqim kanu min ayatina ajaba.
And do you consider the companions of the cave and the inscriptions wonders among my signs? Allah here asks us if we consider the companions of the cave and the inscriptions wonders among His signs. Why? Because it is really something very minor among His signs. Why does Allah ask us that? He's asking us, this is a rhetorical question. He's not seeking for us an answer, but He's saying basically, you consider this to be among a wonder, something marvelous and magnificent, when in fact it is very small and insignificant with regards to the other great wonders of my creation. So this is for us to reflect. You know, though it may seem to us to be very great, really Allah is far greater, and Allah's creation is far greater. But the topic which is introduced in this verse is the topic of the companions of the cave. Who are the companions of the cave? We said in the very beginning that there is a narration found in the Surah of Ibn Ishaq, or the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, as recorded by Ibn Ishaq, as one of the very famous biographies, that there is a narration there which is not that authentic, but it has been commonly quoted as the reasons for the revelation of these verses. And that narration, as we mentioned in the very beginning of this surah, when we were looking at the reasons for its revelation, we mentioned that the pagans in Mecca were seeking some way of discrediting the Prophet, may God's peace and blessing be upon him. So what they did was they went to Medina, they sent some of their people to Medina to find out from the Jews how to discredit him, since he was speaking about things which had to do with Christianity, Judaism, etc., there were some mentions, some things talking about God, one God, etc. They knew that the Jews, had this ancient tradition, of belief in one God, etc. So they wanted to find information from them which could help them to discredit the Prophet. When they asked the Jews told them to ask him 3 questions. And if he was able to answer these questions, then they should know that he really was a true prophet and they should follow him. But if he was unable, if he stumbled, was not capable of answering the questions, then they should know that he was a fake and they could do whatever they wished with him. The first of the questions was to explain the people of the cave, or the companions of the cave. I should mention here that, though the term used most commonly is companions of the cave, Ashabul Kahf, what we find is that actually the term ashab, though it literally does, coming from sahib, it does mean like companion or friend or one who accompanies you. Really, it's referring to people, a group of people who were connected to a cave. So people of the cave can just as well be used. Anyway, what is this referring to? In that period, and in the period before it, this is the 8th century, the 7th century, and prior to that, there was a legend which was common amongst Christian historians, Christian sources, religious sources, etc. And this legend was about some Christian soldiers, 7 or 8 of them, who during the rule of the Roman Emperor Decius, which is in the 3rd century, around 250 after the time of Christ, these soldiers, in order to, they were Christian soldiers, in order to avoid worshipping the idols of the Romans, was sealed up. And while they were in the cave, they went into a sleep, and it wasn't until the 5th century that during the rule of the Roman Emperor Theodosius, that the cave was opened, and when they opened the cave, they found the sleepers who had been sleeping in there. They awoke, and the emperor was very impressed and moved by this miraculous event, and they became evidences for the Christian doctrine of the body's resurrection, which had been actually was being denied at that point. In fact, a number of the Christian bishops, etc., had been tortured and that for their belief in this. And Theodosius, Emperor Theodosius, stopped the persecution of the Christians who held this belief. And this story, as I said, became a legend, became embellished in a number of different writings, but this is the essence of the story, and it became popular throughout that part, this Middle Eastern area of the world. It was known in Greece, in Rome, as well as what was known as Asia Minor, which is now Turkey. And the city where the cave was, which was is the city of Ephesus, right, which is in what is now known as Turkey. And actually, during the reign in the 9th century of the Khalifa Al-Wathiq, one of the Abbasid caliphs, he sent an expedition to the area of Ephesus to try to identify the locality of the sleepers, where this cave was, where it had taken place, as he had done to find out also the barrier of Dhul Qarnayn, which he built, which we'll be looking at later on in the chapter. So Allah here introduces the concept or the idea. This is like the title of the next series of verses, the companions or the people of the cave. It was a wonder, but this wonder is nothing in comparison to the other wonders and the great creations of Allah. The universe, the stars, about which Allah speaks earlier, the earth and its composition, etc. All of this is far greater when we look at it than this minor event which took place, at a certain point in time, as a means of showing people also something of resurrection, something of the greatness of God. In the 10th verse, Allah then begins to introduce the story.
إذ أوى الفتية إلى الكهف فقالوا ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا.
When the youths took refuge in the cave and said, "Our Lord, give us mercy directly from you and make our affairs right for us." Allah begins to describe the story with a summary where He speaks about youths who sought refuge in a cave and called on God to protect them from the trials that they were faced with. This basic story, it identifies a concept which is very highly, recognized in Islam, the concept of faith in youth. For most people, faith comes in old age. People tend to become religious. They want to worship God. They want to be, firm on their religion when they get older. But Allah describes this story was a story about youths, young people. Young people who, because of their firm belief, they refused to submit to the forces around them in the society, the forces of idolatry, and sought refuge in Allah. Because ultimately, when we try to resist the evil which is around us on our own, we are weak individuals. We may fail, we may fall. We need to put our trust ultimately in Allah, because He is the one who can keep us in good standing, who can protect us, and it is His will that we should seek, His protection and His refuge. So these young people, they took refuge in the cave and called on Allah to make their affairs good for them. The faith in youth, we said, is something Islam stresses, and it is something, part of a phenomena which is taking place in different parts of the world where people are accepting Islam in their youth. In America also, we find many of the people who accept Islam, they're doing so in around their mid-20s, and you will find among them those who accept Islam even earlier than that, in their teens. And this phenomena is something, which Allah informs us in order that we should also be conscious of our own children, the believers, that we should not feel that they should be free to do whatever they wish to do. When they get older, then we'll stress to them faith, etc., etc. No, faith is something which we should strive to establish in our children from the earliest of their ages. Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, had told us to teach our children Salah at the age of 7 and spank them for it at the age of 10. Establish the basic practices. And they were encouraged even to fast, between the ages of 7 and 10, Children are encouraged to fast even from then. Some people even do it from before that. And so it's something we should strive for, because the rewards for faith in youth are massive. Massive to the family as well as massive to those individuals themselves. For example, when the Prophet ﷺ, in order to stress this, had mentioned that among the people who would be under the shade of Allah's throne on the day of judgment, resurrection and judgment, when there would be no other shade, would be a youth who grew up in the worship of Allah, growing up in faith. This is something which we should want for our children. If we missed it ourselves, we should strive to help them to achieve it. In the 11th verse, Allah then goes on to explain some general aspects of the story, and He says,
فضربنا على آذانهم في الكهف سنين عددا.
So I sealed their ears for a number of years. The phrase to seal their ears really refers to Allah putting them to sleep, because when a person goes to sleep, they lose consciousness. They're not aware of what is happening around them. People can be talking in the room, etc., and it is as if their ears have been sealed. They can't hear it. So this was, you could say, a metaphorical expression used to refer to the fact that Allah put them to sleep. And He didn't say really they went to sleep themselves, because it is not from them. This is obviously something miraculous from Allah. He is the one who put them into a sleep, a very deep sleep, which was not like any other sleep they had ever had before. And it was a miraculous sleep. So Allah refers to it, as Himself actually putting them to sleep. In the 12th verse, He continues explaining the reason why this was done. He said,
ثم بعثناهم لنعلم أي الحزبين أحصى لما لبثوا أمدا.
Then I woke them in order to test which of the two parties would better calculate the term they spent there. Allah goes on here now to explain that this is a part of a test. This is a test for those sleepers themselves, those individuals, those youths who took themselves seeking Allah's refuge into a cave to protect themselves from the corruption of the society. And at the same time, it would be a test for those who learned about their story or their case, those who would disbelieve, those who would believe in it, those who would try to attribute it to things other than Allah, and those who would recognize that this is ultimately from Allah. Those who may, because as they argued or debated about the time that was spent, etc., and this whole process, it became obviously a test of faith for those who could accept this, whether it comes in the final revelation or whether it was at the actual time that people found them. This was a test. So what we see in the story itself, though, is that Allah did preserve them because of their faith, their commitment. When they sought refuge, Allah protected them. He put them to sleep for a period of time, and then He is the one who woke them up. Actually, in the story we mentioned earlier that it was people who discovered the cave, etc. So it appears in that story that when they discovered the cave and opened it, they awoke. But actually Allah describes it here as that He is the one who woke them up. Because discovering the cave, anybody else discovering the cave, even if they did do that, if that's the way the story went, and that's how the legend is, that would not be sufficient to wake them up if they were dead. If a person, like people in a coma, they get up when Allah chooses for them to get up. We try all kinds of things, external stimuli, etc., medical procedures, etc., to bring people out of coma, but they come out of their comas when it seems to be the time for them to come out. Doctors are not able to predict how long are they going to be in a coma. And this coma is like something like this, because sometimes people are in comas for years, and they just come out and nobody knows why. Ultimately, it is Allah who wakes them up. And as we said, this is the beginning of the story. Allah summarizes it, that these youths went off to a cave seeking refuge in Allah to protect them. Allah put them to sleep and He woke them up as a test for them and for the people who they came in contact with. And with that, dear viewers, we'll stop and continue in our next segment the story as Allah relates it to us, the story of the people of the cave. And I bid you now farewell, dear viewers, and hope to see you, or hope you will continue to follow this explanation of Surah Al Kahf in our coming segments. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.